Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast are of the presenters and the presenters only and do not represent the views, opinions, or strategies of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Please like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 126, Safety at Work and Away. Got a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're going to get through this as quick as we can to start it out. Why don't you tell us about your week, Bill?
Oh, I'm telling you, I pray for every one of you out there in the craft. The stories I've heard, the questions I've gotten, it's hard to believe that this organization called the United States Postal Service can actually operate, function as an entity serving the community with the people running it. It is absolutely scary, and I'm gonna ride this horse till my death. The NSS does not need a national officer with a house in Alexandria. They ought to be at their home. The NSS ought to be decentralized and given back to the states. If I hear one more complaint about a DR, ADR, area steward, local stewards, and obviously they don't, because apparently the craft feels they're not being fully represented or fairly represented in their offices. And I truly do. My hats off to everybody who's in this craft, because you're not only fighting management every day, you have to fight the NSS. And I don't know how you do it. I really don't. And, God be with you, because it's scary when you have that many fronts to battle every day. My week basically has been very enjoyable. Had grandson over Tuesday, Wednesday. Had all my grandsons and sons over here Friday for July 4th, and a couple of in-laws and their spouses. And, spent most of the time at the grill making sure everybody was well fed. And it was just a picture-perfect day weather-wise. Everything was just great. It was great to have my family around me, which I'm so appreciative. So, I've had a great week, as far as that is concerned. But, like I said, with the steward system, that this is it's making my stomach tie up in knots. How about you, Josh? How'd your week go?
I could get used to this work schedule. You come in on Monday, or I come in on Monday, I work. I'm off Tuesday, work Wednesday and Thursday, off Friday, work yesterday, off today. Not a bad schedule. Point of privilege, y'all. You know me as the elections person, but I'm also going to be the safety person right off jump. One of my RCAs in the SNDC had an accident, totaled the Metris. Both parties, the person that hit him and the carrier, are fine. So you already know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it again, as Bill says in his parlance: wear the damn seatbelt. I don't want to hear of a carrier getting hurt. Every airbag in that Metris, according to the RCA, popped. The Metris was totaled. I saw a picture of it. But the key is that our carrier's okay. Overall, my week was, like I said, tongue-in-cheek, I love my new work schedule. Get used to that. But yesterday I had very little raw mail. And I'm thinking, what awaits me on Monday? But overall, not too bad. It actually cooled off a little bit here. And hopefully it'll keep cooling off, because this 95-degree bullshit, no. I don't do it. I don't like humidity. So, that was my week. James?
Yeah, I now know what it's like to be in a formula office by having Friday off and working Saturday, working my K day, and having a day in between your off days. That sucks. I feel bad for you guys that have formula offices having to do that. Because I usually use my Saturday to be a little slow, getting around doing things, kind of rebuilding my energy from the week of work, and then Sunday doing the work I need to do around the house and stuff like that. But having Friday off, then going back to work Saturday, then having Sunday off, and then going back to work tomorrow, it's a drag. But the week was okay. And I'm going to make a point to people who are in our system. Your grievance count doesn't matter as much as your ability to get management to not do it in the first place. Saturday morning, one of my RCAs comes up to me and says that they're forcing our RCAs to go to another office when they're finished with their route. I turned around and had a discussion with my supervisor, and with that discussion alone, those carriers did not go to that other office to cover routes. That is how you make change here. It doesn't need to be a grievance. And one of the carriers was on a full route. The other one was running both aux routes. And we had new carriers on two routes that they hadn't done much of before. So what ended up happening is the carrier on the aux route, as well as other carriers, went out and helped the newer carriers to get them back before the truck left for the day. So they ended up actually working more hours at our office than they, sending them to another office that way, and taking care of our office, getting our offices completely done. And that is the definition of how you need to work together with management and how management needs to work with us. You say, hey, this isn't right. They're like, okay, what do you got? Well, I have the order of consideration here, and it says specifically if they're running a regular route, they cannot be used in another office. Okay, send that to me really quick so that way I have it on record if anybody argues with me on it. But it's taken care of. It's that simple. Now, granted, there are managers out there that won't do that. Those are the ones we need to go after. We need to fix those. Because we should be able to show them in black and white that they're wrong, and them go, all right, I'll fix it, without having to go through the grievance process. Now, granted, some will say, just grieve it later, but we need our whole system to be in that mindset of getting management to agree they're wrong before it goes to the grievance process. And that requires boots in the office. We talked about how we don't have a lot of local stewards out there, but we still can have boots in the office.
Well, James,
Go ahead.
That's a great segue into my situation because of the fact that actually happened. A carrier called me, and their area steward wasn't available, so they called me, and they had two subs scheduled on routes, and they were sent to another town. I won't mention the town so I don't give the carrier away. They were sent to another town to help there. Now they're down 3 routes. Now, you sit there and say, now, how are you going to cover 3 routes when you just gave 2 carriers away? Well, first of all, I explained if those carriers were scheduled, they are considered unavailable to be sent to other offices. Then the manager went further and mandated regulars help, which I brought up the MOU, which is it's volunteer, not voluntold.
And that was the
And they
abuse we were talking about. That was the abuse we were talking
Right.
about with that MOU, was management doing exactly that.
And once I got this carrier straightened out, I made sure they went back to the area steward, because it is a good area steward. They just weren't available at the time. But laid out the grievances that the file for, and said, make sure you attach copies. Make sure in the settlement you put cease and desist immediately. And I said, and make sure you put a financial penalty on there for this occurrence and any future occurrences. And this
Yep.
carrier said, Bill, why aren't you our steward? But the fact of the matter is, it just like you said, you're sending people to offices, but they're already scheduled in your own office. Now, this is a microcosm of the actual problem, because that manager made that decision, was probably pressured from above to send people to this other office, which means they are living in fear for their job, because they may have, actually, defied a regional district manager or a POOM. It doesn't matter. You're knowingly violating the contract. And James is not a steward, but he stepped in and interfered with the process going in his office, and resolved it without a grievance and without a steward. You're not going to do that 80% of the time. But the fact that you sit there and you explain it to them, you show them to them in black and white, and that MOU ought to be posted up in every office, you can turn around and shortcut the whole process of grieving it by standing up for others.
And may I say something?
Always.
Chair recognizes Josh.
Stowe, Delegate, North Carolina. By standing up for others, you run the very distinct possibility of actually bringing people into the union because they see their fellow carriers and soon-to-be craft members stepping up and helping people. Imagine that. If we stand up, if we have a backbone and are not afraid, we might actually get some more people to join the union, to vote, and here I go, bring our numbers up. 9% for my state, 16% for the national. I'm sorry. These numbers are for beginners. We're not beginners. We've been doing this shit for over 100 years, people. Step it up. End of rant.
No, you're right. And we've got to step up to protect our carriers. I had a carrier talk to me about management forcing carriers to use a vehicle that had minimal braking power. Like you put it to the floor braking power.
1767 off the jump.
Exactly. And when these carriers were reaching out, they're like, I talked to my union representative, and they said just do what management says and write it up when you get back. What the hell?
No.
I know.
No. What you do, if something is that asinine, you say, I want that in writing. Why? So when I'm in the ditch, when I wreck, when I go to hit the brakes, I have something to fall back on.
Yeah, but what if you don't go in the ditch? What if you get creamed by a tractor trailer, or a utility truck? You don't step foot in that damn vehicle if it's that bad.
No.
Yeah, what if you rear end somebody? What if you pull into a customer's driveway that turns around and you end up smacking their car?
Exactly.
There's things you got to think about beyond just the scope of it takes me a while to stop. You got to think what's going to stop you if you can't. And that segues right into wearing your seatbelt. I know management harps on that, and I know it makes us sound like management when we harp on that. But it's important that you do. Those few seconds it takes for you to latch that seatbelt is a matter of life and death. Now, being that I am a former firefighter, I can tell you, people have died not wearing their seatbelt in a 20-mile-an-hour crash. And somebody has survived a crash with a closing speed of 120 miles an hour. That's two vehicles going 60 miles an hour on average towards each other. Has survived because they were wearing their seatbelt.
Think about
That
it
is
like
the key.
y'all. Oh, sorry, James.
Go ahead.
Think about this. If you're saying, "Oh, I don't want to wear that seatbelt. I'm only going such and such distance." Which would you rather have? A headstone or a little bit of soreness on your chest where the seatbelt dug into you to save your ass?
Yeah, it's going to cause a little bruising, maybe break a rib at most, but that's a heck of a lot better. Sure, you're going to be in pain for a little while, but it's a lot better than permanent removal from the society.
Yeah.
But, and that's in the airbags. Why do you think they call them supplemental restraint? They're to supplement your seatbelt. It's to prevent you from actually getting whiplash and concussed too much from the car accident while wearing your seatbelt. For those of us that drive personal vehicles with airbags, or ones that are driving the Metris or other newer models of vehicles that actually have airbags. And another thing you have to think about is look at all the stuff that's happening around this nation right now. The flooding in Texas. I saw an image of the post office that was completely leveled from the flooding.
Yep. Yeah.
Think of the flooding in North Carolina. Think of the flooding in Kentucky and Tennessee. Things like that. Your safety is number one. Keeping an eye on the weather forecast, although they're getting a little more sporadic on accuracy, worse than they were before. It's important to know what's coming. It's important to know what keeps you safe. Because you're the only one that matters. We keep telling you this. You're the only one that matters on your safety. Whether it's in the office, in the vehicle, or even out of the office. You are in charge of yourself and your own safety.
Amen.
Amen.
And I bring that up because just yesterday, at the time of recording of this podcast, a person drowned at an address on my route. It wasn't my customer at that address, but it was in front of that address on the lake. Even outside of the office, you got to think of your safety.
I second that.
Yeah, there was
Now-
another video, James, showing a post office with the mattresses and LLVs with water up to their grills. I'm sitting there going, okay, they're not going out Monday.
No.
But that little post office, it washed the whole building away.
Yeah, a brick building washed away. It's a force of water.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to
Turn
think.
around, don't drown.
Yep. And these are the statistics on this. A half a foot of running water will knock you off your feet. A foot of running water, rushing water, could wash away a car. As soon as it gets up to the frame of the car, it starts exerting pressure on a larger surface area of the car, plus the air in the tires, even though the car is 4,000 pounds, does help it float a little bit. And the shape of the body styling, kind of like a boat. That's why when you see cars in floodwaters, they're usually floating with the engine part down, because that's the heaviest part of the car, but the rest of the car is sticking up out of the water.
That reminds me of a great segue again, James. If you're in that situation, always move to the back seat because that's the highest elevation in that vehicle. And the back window is easier to break.
Yes, a lot of modern cars now have the laminate glass in the windows, and the driver and passenger windows in the front. The rear glass is usually tempered and easier to break. And if it has power windows and the car still has power, you have the opportunity to open the window to get out of the car. If it doesn't, or if it has manual, that makes it easier. But if not, the seat, the driver and passenger seat headrests, if they move up and down on metal poles, one of those poles has a point on it you can use to break the glass. But make sure you do it in the corner of the glass, not in the center of it. The more you know.
Hey, it's everyday safety.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, you drive off a rain slick road at night, end up in a pond or a lake or a river. You know, there you go. You got your outs.
You got a way to get yourself at least out of the car, which if you stay in, it's going to drown you. But you have a way to get out, possibly. But we do pray for everybody down in Texas. And as a reminder, as we always do, Postal Employee Relief Fund. Help your fellow brothers and sisters of the craft with the Postal Employee Relief Fund, PERF. Because with all these natural disasters going on and issues going on around this country, now more than ever, carriers are going to need that assistance, especially with carriers that are living paycheck to paycheck, those on Table 2, those RCAs, PTFs that aren't working 6 days a week. We got to do something to help them out, and the Postal Employee Relief Fund is the best way to do it. So make sure you're helping your fellow brothers and sisters out there with it.
James, may I butt in for a moment?
Of course.
I'm on the postalrelief.com. Again, postalrelief.com website. And they actually have a counter toward the bottom of the page that says, as of right now, 7:43 on Sunday, 6 families are in need of assistance right now. So that could be some of our brothers and sisters down in Texas, or they could be out in California where they have a wildfire burning. Who knows? But we encourage everybody to donate to PERF. And if you need to access PERF, again, website is postalrelief.com.
You know, don't put yourself at risk out there with any of this. If the road's flooded, don't try to attempt delivery. We've seen videos of carriers driving LLVs through floodwaters and stuff like that. I'm going to tell you this, especially in cities where you have sewer and
storm drains
and things like that, those can actually get so overwhelmed, they actually start collapsing. And even though they're like full of water, that water can seep out from around that pipe, especially under high pressure, and actually create a sinkhole underneath where that water is escaping from that pipe. And when that happens, the road beneath it collapses, and if it's covered in water, you're not going to see it. And if they have sewer lines under there, there's a possibility the water you're driving through has sewage in it, raw sewage. And if you're in Texas, it could have fire ants floating on the surface of it. And if you drive an LLV through there, those fire ants are going to see that LLV and be like, hey, dry ground, and climb all up on that thing. Take care of yourself, keep yourself safe, don't put yourself in a situation where there's a possibility you could get hurt. Because what do you say at the end of the episode usually, Bill?
You're the most important delivery of the day. Get home to your loved ones.
Exactly.
Your job can be replaced. You can't. And you're right. You know, in the summer, this is one of the times of the year that, you know, a lot of people don't pay attention. They're out camping, backpacking. They don't pay attention to the wildlife that's in the area, whether it be snakes or scorpions, black widows, bears, coyotes. I mean, you know, coyotes have been known to try to carry off children. So, I mean, you know, depending on what part of the country you live in, you have different, dangers that you have to respect and be aware of. And this is an everyday occurrence. Well, if you're a suburban person and you have an in-ground pool, you have to be careful about children around the water. And the fact of the matter is that I'm just sitting here and I'm screaming bloody murder because this storm hit with such ferocity, and yet all the alerts didn't go out on the phones. Well, if you can put Amber Alerts out on my phone, once a week, I'm sure you could post weather emergencies on the phones also using the same system. The time of day may have affected it, the severity may have affected. But the videos I've seen where they had basically air raid sirens going off in several little towns.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a low-lying area, if you're along a riverbank, you've got to get to high ground. I mean, I saw a lady where she was clinging to a pole in her car, trying to hold on to the pole while the water was trying to sweep her car away from, with her in it. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, God's sakes, get rid of the car, lady. I stopped probably counting around 30 people being rescued in trees as the rivers are raging down, around them. The force of water is nothing to even joke about. And, like somebody said, if you see water, turn around, don't drown. That's a plain and simple. Do not cross a road with water. You don't know if the road bed is still there. You don't know how fast that water is coming. You don't know how deep it is at that point. Even if you drive it every day on your route, you are more or less ambiguous in regards to the terrain until it changes. And then when it changes, you're guessing. Because, I drive that way every day. Yes, but you don't drive that way every day with water rushing across it.
And on top of that,
into water. Go ahead.
Yeah. On top of that, a lot of places like that where you have a low water crossing, just up the road of that low water crossing, it's a little bit. The road goes up a little bit. There's the pipe that allows the water to actually pass under the road, the culvert pipe. If the water is going over the road, there is a high likelihood it is percolating around that culvert and could wash that culvert out. There's plenty of videos out on YouTube of culverts literally getting washed out under the road where the water is only crossing beyond where the culvert is, but all of a sudden you see the pavement just start getting ripped up as this culvert literally gets flipped over in front of the roadway, and the culvert's gone, and the road is gone where the culvert was. And you never know when that's going to happen. And again, that's where subduction occurs, and you could get a sinkhole and sink through the roadway into that culvert. And some of these culverts are almost big enough to drive a car through in some instances. So, and talking about not having an alert there, I just want to clear the air on behalf of my fellow meteorologists and storm enthusiasts out there. They had issued a hydrologic flood outlook Thursday morning with a flash flood potential. And then a flood watch was issued at 1:18 p.m. on Thursday in effect through Friday morning. The Weather Prediction Center issued 3 heavy rain event alerts all the way through this, indicating the potential for flash flooding. And they issued a hydrologic discussion, a rainfall discussion, at 6:22 p.m. Central Daylight Time. That's Thursday. Message locally considerable flood wording for areas north and west of San Antonio, including Kerrville. The first flash flood warning was issued at 11:41 p.m. Thursday for Bandera County, at 1:14 a.m. Flash flood warning with a considerable tag was issued for Bandera and Kerr counties. Flash flood warnings with the impact-based warning tags considerable or catastrophic were issued, and they will automatically issue wireless emergency alerts on enabled mobile devices. Now, the first reports from the Kerr County Sheriff's Office of flooding was at 4:35 a.m. Flash flood warning was upgraded to a flash flood emergency for Kerr County, including Hunt, as early as 4:03 a.m. 5 a.m. Hydrologic discussion 146. Concern for widespread considerably flooding throughout the day. And a flash flood emergency was issued for the Guadalupe River at 5:34 a.m. So there were alerts out there before people get grailing on the National Weather Service for it. Yes, people can say meteorologist is the only job where you can be wrong half the time and still keep your job. But they were on point with this. The problem is, 1, apathy. 2, people not heeding the alerts. And 3, businesses and local agencies not heeding these alerts. Now, I do have a report that Kerr County had no flood warning system for this area, even though it floods on quite a few times recently that I know of. So it's one of those things, and they said that the reason why they don't have it is because of the cost of it. But
yeah, I read that also, that the actual citizens of that area voted against it because of the cost.
Yes. And it's one of those things that even though you could do everything right, it's still a possibility that something like this could happen. It's less likely if you do everything right. But there were systems available. Not only do you have the wireless emergency alerts, and I will tell you, people turn them off on their phones. People actually set those alerts off. The only ones you can't turn off are presidential alerts. And that was before anybody specific got elected to the office. Is when wireless emergency alerts started, that you couldn't turn off presidential alerts, which would be national emergency. The other way is to have dedicated weather apps with alerting on them. And then the third way is to have a NOAA weather radio tuned to the local frequency. And granted, they're only up about 95% of the time because they're either down for maintenance. They use phone lines to get the alerts out, and then a radio broadcaster to send them out to everybody. But that is another great way to get the alerts. Plus, you can also get a weather forecast off of them as well. And some of them are plug-in. You can plug them into house power, and if the power goes out, they operate on batteries. Or you can get just standalone battery-operated ones. Just make sure you change the batteries frequently to make sure that they're fresh. But make sure you have a way to get those alerts. Because even myself, somebody who's passionate about the weather and loves looking at the weather and studying the weather and figuring out what the weather's doing, I have multiple ways to get alerts. Because I want to know if it's going to impact me. And you should too. Especially those that have to stand out at CBUs or are in an aluminum tin can like the LLV. I mean, even if you're in a vehicle, because a vehicle is not going to survive a flood or a tornado.
Not that I'm a doomsday prepper per se, but one of the best things you can possibly get is a tactical weather radio. It's a hand crank system, and that way you don't have to worry about the batteries or anything. And whenever I go out, foraging into the woods that I do, that's with me because you don't know what's going to happen at any moment. We had a situation here 2 weeks ago where we got caught in a rainstorm, and they were not predicting anything horrendous per se. But they did advise, because of the ground saturation already, that trees were, likely to come over and all, and that the fact that the wind gusts were going to go up to 60 miles an hour. Well, 120,000 people later, they were trying to get their power back on because it happened exactly like that. The power went out from tree limbs and trees themselves going down on top of the power lines. How do you find out what's going on? Get one of these cranked radio systems that will give you national emergency broadcasts as well as weather forecasts. They're cheap. They're like under $50. And if your life isn't worth $50, then shame on you.
Josh, you want to add to that?
Pretty certain y'all covered it all. I mean, and we have to tie personal safety into this. Make sure that even if it's a nice sunny day, always have something with you if you have to sit in that vehicle for a long time. Let's say it's 75 degrees and it's a nice day, but you always need to have something to take a drink of. Let's say your vehicle breaks down and the tow truck may not be there for 2 or 3 hours and you're in the middle of nowhere. You always have to prepare for stuff. You have to be aware of where your route runs and where you can go to call for assistance if need be. Or if you're if you have a really rural route. So, but y'all pretty much covered everything.
It's funny because when you say that being prepared, when I worked during the summertime, I usually had 6 to 8 bottles of water with me. 4 frozen, 4 cold. And when I come back at the end of the day and I still have 2 frozen and 2 unfrozen, my wife goes, "Well, why do you need to carry so many?" Just in case I break down. Because of the fact that I'm driving, a 35, 40-year-old vehicle. And if I break down and I have to wait for a tow truck, I may not be in area. Now, where my route is, I didn't have too many areas where I could be stranded without being able to walk to a residence. You got these people out in Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Wyoming, and all. I mean, Texas, as big as that state is, and as hot as it is, you need to make sure that you're responsible for your own survival. And that means making sure you have plenty of fluids.
You're right. You're right. Exactly right. And I mean, even in the middle of Montana and Nebraska and North Dakota, South Dakota, those areas, you guys are experiencing a lot of the heat too in some places, hotter than you guys normally get. It's the same for you guys too. And it's crazy to think that we have to talk about that for far northern states, but it's true too for them. But now we have to get into a major, deep discussion here. And this is something I've been noticing lately on social media. And it's kind of disheartening. But after the tentative agreement came out, the conversations on social media have really, really dampened. A lot of people have stopped commenting, replying to people, things like that, as if the camaraderie had died with the tentative agreement being passed. We can't stop. We can't take our foot off the gas on this. We need to keep pushing for reforms. Yes, the tentative agreement, the lack of participation in that was a shot in the gut. And our president is the first one in line to take the blame for that in terms of the lack of people wanting to vote. But it is also telling that there were more no votes in that less amount of people replying than there was in the 2022 vote. More people voted no, even with less people voting, than in 2022. That means people were paying attention. People were voting no on this. Even people who had probably voted yes in 2022 voted no this time. So don't get disheartened. Don't get discouraged by the fact that the national board got a small victory here. And it is a small victory. We need to hold them to task. We need to stand up, and we need to keep pushing, and we need to keep helping our fellow brothers and sisters on social media and in our offices and in our areas. Across this nation, there are carriers that need help. There are carriers that need us to help them, and we need to be the ones stepping up to do it. Every single person that's listening to this needs to step up. Go ahead, Josh.
May I play devil's advocate?
Please do.
Well, why do I need to join the union? They have to represent me for free anyway.
Bill, you take that one.
All right, that's true. We have to represent you in matters of discipline or contractual violations. What we don't have to do is provide you any information in regards to what the union's doing on your behalf. So therefore, whether or not you're going to be a cab or a freeloader, as Don Madsen would say, you're going to take whatever we decide is best for you, and you have no say in it. You also have no vote, no voice in who your elected delegates are in going to the national convention. Because contrary to what James says in regards to what Madsen and the national board selects for us, it is the delegates at the national convention who decide who's going to represent you. Not the national board. They're the ones who are being elected, but the delegates, those retirees that are just getting vacations out of this, and there are some good retirees, those are going along because they're part of the national steward system. And they have to be there because guess what? Their paycheck is dictated by those on the national board. They got guaranteed salaries. And guess what? If you're a 47K, you're being cut. If you're a 48K, you're being cut. But they're getting paid at a 48K. How much sense does that make? And if you don't want to be a union member because the fact that we have to represent you for free, don't forget this. You don't get the information from the union or your local meetings or your state conventions or your boosters where you find out where your rights are being violated, where the contract is being stomped into the ground because you're not a member. If you control the information, if you control the diatribe that the national media has, the news stations and all, if you follow all that, guess what? You're getting half the information because more than half of the national news agencies are biased in some one way or another. Reminds me of when Walter Cronkite used to do the news, and Walter Cronkite would report the news and never offered an opinion about it because that was not his job to sway you to his thinking. When you are a non-union member, you have no right to the information that you could utilize to protect yourself, to learn about your route, about wrecks. That information is supposed to be provided to you by management. How many people out there have gotten management to provide them any information on wrecks, let alone post the PTRs or the radar reports on a daily basis? How many people who aren't in the union get stomped on because they don't know the contract, the M38, the PO63, the ELM? They have no access to this information. Now, if you're a union member, you have full access to this. Does it give you any more rights to be represented? No. But let me tell you something. There is, and there shouldn't be, but there is bias towards representing non-members. I have seen it. I've never done it because of the fact that I'm a defense attorney and I have to represent all my clients equally to the best of my ability. And it gives me a great deal of satisfaction. Yeah. And it gives me a great deal of satisfaction of putting it to management. But the fact of the matter is, if you are ignorant of your rights, of the contract, of the language that protects you, then you're setting yourself up to be a victim. If you don't get involved, if you don't have a voice to vote, then you have no right to complain about what you get in the contract because you did not participate. You did not help change the course of this union. You did not help select the correct delegates to go to the national convention, who are the ones, they are your voice in regards to changing the national board, to getting people elected who represent your views and your interests. And the only way you can do that is if you're a dues paying member. Go ahead, I'll let you interrupt there, Mr. Okay. North Carolina.
Okay. Remember, each one of us that are delegates at the National Convention are representing the hopes and desires of about 100 people.
Yep.
So let me just say this. Yes, I am being paid to go to the National Convention. No, it will not be a vacation. At the forefront of my mind will be the 100 or so people in my state of North Carolina that I'm representing. I make that a promise to y'all. Because at the end of the day, they selected me because they thought that I would represent what they wanted. And it is my duty and my honor to live up to that. Now, you have people that brag and say, oh, I'm getting paid to go on vacation. Okay. Bill and James, we had some fun last year at Reno. But that was maybe 5% of our time, if that. What was the other 90-some%? It was work.
Work, yeah. Getting ready for caucus night, going over to resolutions, running down to Costco to get snacks for caucus night, getting ready for caucus night, getting your speeches ready, talking to people on the floor, manning our booths, handing out T-shirts, information, getting the feel for the floor. Yeah, oh God, yeah, we had a great time. I mean, the only time we actually dropped our guard, per se, was after caucus night. Once caucus night is finished, it's basically in the hands of the body. You can do work the next day on some of the resolutions and everything that they'll be talking about, but in between the voting, but otherwise everything else is done. You stayed up to 1:30 at night arguing about resolutions being submitted. You're arguing about the language in the resolutions. You're looking for amendments. We're voting on the amendment, not the resolution, just the amendment to the resolution, and then voting on the resolution.
If it passed, we're voting on the amended resolution.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, it's one of those things where we just had our state convention, and two individuals well known in our state convention posted a picture of hoisting tall beers at a local watering hole, and it's like, okay, that's nice, but it gives the wrong perception of what we actually do there. And a state convention is a mini national convention, but we still do the resolutions and everything else. And you see the politicking going on. The state president coming over to me, going, "Are you really going to run against me this year?" No, I'm not running against you this year. But the fear in her eyes was that she would lose her position.
I like what Frequency said. For those that are listening to the recording, do I have permission to read it from y'all?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, she says 8 hours of meetings, maybe 90 minutes a day preparing / wrapping up for meetings. Hopefully an hour to eat in the day instead of depending on dinner. 90 minutes walking and sleep. That's it.
I'm going to amend that.
Okay.
Because when there are a couple of days in there that not only are you doing that specifically, you're also going back to your room or going to a dinner place or restaurant or maybe down to a little lobby or wherever, sitting down and having discussions about the resolutions. Like when Bill, Kristen, and I were in Grand Rapids, we went and sat along the Grand River right outside of the hotel and convention center at a table there, and we were going through the resolutions. And we were out there
For
until what,
hours.
11:30 night, 11:30
Yeah.
midnight, doing that. You know,
We were out there
and
for hours.
while Bill, he doesn't sleep until the resolutions have all been gone through in his room.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that do actually believe that this is a position where they actually have to step up and do something and actually make a difference for this craft. Right or wrong, if they step up to that mic to talk about it, I give them props because it takes a lot of guts to stand up, step up, and talk on that mic in front of a national 1,500 people. You know, and like at my state convention, we had a little over 100 people there, and first timers were stepping up the mic to talk about resolutions that were presented. So some of these people are passionate about doing this. Others, maybe not. I don't know them personally. I can't say specifically. But you can recognize the passionate ones because they're paying attention. They're taking notes. They're watching what's going on around the room. They're watching what people are saying. They're listening attentively to what's being said. Some people come in there and they're fooling around on their phones. They're, yeah, and then you have the, oh, somebody said falling asleep, you know, but, and then when somebody says something that's matching what you normally say, they all turn and look at you. I'll talk about that as the regional conferences, all the people looking at me when specific statements were made. But
Slack last year.
and it's one of those things that it's amazing to watch the different mindsets of people too when they're talking about these things on the mic and having that passion for this craft, whether it is positive, negative, whatever. At least they're saying something and stepping up to say something. You know, everybody brings a different idea to what these things are. And it's amazing to also understand how different areas think about things, you know. Whereas Texas may not think about having snow tires on their government vehicles. But at the same time, people in cooler climates may think AC is a luxury, whereas in Texas, it's a necessity. But it's one of those very important, influential things. And those resolutions that we pass, especially the ones that affect our contract, we put forth on good faith that our national board is going to take them and use them to help better our position, not just throw them in the trash can.
Yeah, that bothers me in regards to the resolutions, specifically because of the fact that you get these resolutions, several hundred of them, passed by various individuals in different states, and then the national board gets them and indiscriminately decides yay or nay to present them. If you're supposed to represent us, shouldn't you be representing the resolutions that have value to us? Not for, indiscriminate determination on your part to say, oh, this doesn't affect enough people. If it affects one person, it's a valid resolution. If it affects 5 carriers, it's a valid resolution. because you cannot afford to lose one craft member ever.
Mm-hmm.
So take that to court and say, Your Honor, I like to present my case that they're failing to duly represent the craft.
And somebody made the comment that most of the objections were the same two dozen-ish people. I'm one of them.
Yep.
But there were people that didn't step up to object that stood up and discussed those resolutions. That's another aspect of that as well. You know, there were, I think, we had passed a ruling that only the objector and the creator speak on them, but we could motion to suspend the rules to actually have a discussion on that, and we did that a couple of times to actually discuss in depth more on these resolutions to give people a more broader perspective on what they're voting on. Now, granted, I love the fact that we flew through them like that. It made it easier, but at the same time, sometimes that discussion is warranted.
Especially if an amended form of the language is presented up on the screens.
Yeah. And a lot of the resolutions, the ones that are on the resolution forms, aren't allowed to be amended, I believe. I believe the only ones that can be amended are ones that are submitted under new business.
No.
That national?
No. National, you can amend the language on there, but you have to take it out and resubmit it.
Yeah, it's just the constitutional ones cannot be amended once passed by a lower body. That's right. Yes. Standing rules are in the magazine, as said in our chat. You know, go through your magazine, read what the schedule is. Yes, we have a lot of pomp and circumstance in there with the first day of things and specific speakers and things like that. Some of them, you know, like APCU, Trestle Tree, and so on, pay to be there. They help fund the National Convention. So we have to allow them to speak on stage because they're putting enough money down for us to do our National Convention. Some people may not agree with that, but they're paying for the advertising space, basically.
Well, if you cut the payroll of national officers, you can pay for the convention also. It's just an idea.
There's quite a few things you could do. I mean, if you actually supported the craft correctly across the nation, you'd have enough dues-paying members that you wouldn't have to worry about covering the cost of National Convention, because you'd have enough dues-paying money coming in to not only cover National Convention, but cover all your grievances that you have to deal with across the nation, because a craft that actually feels well represented will more likely step up to fight against management when management's doing something wrong. So, and then once you get all these people standing up and fighting against management, management's going to finally tuck tail and trot when it comes to doing things wrong. So you'll actually lower the amount of money you're spending on grievances because the craft has stood up and management finally backs down. You have to spend money to save money.
And if you're settling at the local level with a local steward, you're not spending any money at all.
Mm-hmm.
I will, on the subject of the National Convention, may I interject something?
You don't have to keep asking, just interject.
My mother raised me good.
I understand that, but on here it's a free form. We're just friends here talking, so you don't have to ask permission. None of us are above the other.
Okay. So anybody that is listening right now, and anybody who is listening when this episode goes live, as someone who went to the First Timers seminar at the National Convention, I am almost requiring you to go, because if I am not mistaken, our parliamentarian will be there, Mr. Jim Slaughter, and he will present you the Robert's Rules of Order, and that will give you an idea how to navigate some of the language that is being used when you're talking about resolutions and constitutional changes at the National Convention, because up until then, I never knew what it was to call the question. There's several things on there that you need to know, because if you want to speak on something, you have to know what to ask for. Otherwise, you won't get what you want. So
And they give you a handy printout that tells you what you can and cannot do at the mic. Can you object to this? Can you interrupt with this? Can you do this? Can you do that? That is a great resource, and I actually keep it with me even today, just as a reference for myself, in case I forget procedurally what I'm supposed to do. Even me, somebody who's done it for several years now, still has to look back and make sure I do things under the procedural right rules that we're supposed to do. And also, Robert's Rules of Order, as dry as that is, not only is that how our national board operates, that's how your local government operates, your state government, your national government. Most nonprofit agencies that have a board of directors, that's how they operate, by Robert's Rules of Order. So it's one of those things that you have to know how to do it right, so it goes into the record the correct way and people know exactly what you're talking about.
And also another point of information about the convention. We may be RCAs, ARCs, PTFs, retired regulars, whatever. I'm going to say this, and I mean it. I do not want to hear any more of this petty bullshit of throwing insults at people that are brave enough to stand up at that mic. I heard it happen last year, and it made me sick.
We are all there for the same reason, and whether you agree with them or not, they have the right to make those statements. You can step up there and say, I disagree with the previous speaker's comments, that they're bullshit, as Josh said, but don't harass your fellow brothers and sisters. Agree to disagree. Because we're all there for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to better the rural craft. Make decisions that make the craft better. Every single person that steps up to that mic is speaking to the chair on the stage. You'll see me, I'll be looking around the room and stuff like that, but I am still speaking directly to that guy up on the stage. Because that is how you're supposed to do it by Robert's Rules of Order. And I understand people are passionate and they want to invoke emotions in their fellow carriers that are on the floor. But do it by speaking to the chair. And it doesn't matter if it's the president or if it's the vice president, because they are the chairs of this. The vice president stands in for the president, so the president isn't running the whole thing the whole time. And also another thing, before you speak, take a breath, state your last name, delegate, state you're from, and wait for the chair to recognize you. Because the chair has to recognize you. Once the chair recognizes you, pause for a second again. And the reason I am saying this, our stenographer that writes our transcript for the convention needs that gap to delegate who is speaking in the transcript. We have to respect that person because they are there from the time we start to the time we stop, and the only time they take a break is either when we take a break or they specifically request they need to have like a bathroom break or something like that. So they are one of the most important people there because the members that can't make it are relying on that transcript to be accurate. And if we're speaking over top of each other, it can't be accurate. Anyway, anything else you guys want to add on that?
No, except for get involved, get elected, participate, see how it goes. I took a first timer to my state convention, and they're just enthused as hell seeing how the process works and everything. I mean, they're a vigilant union member and very knowledgeable in regards to the contract and everything, but they never saw the inner workings of the process at a state convention. And that's where, if that's where you have to start there, start at the local, start at your boosters, but get involved and realize, the amount of work that we put in when we do these things. Like I said, I mean, we go to national convention. The only time we have off is at the end of caucus night. And even then, you're turning around and you're doing some work afterwards, but actually you let off a little bit of steam because of the fact that it's been grueling for 4 days. 1 day of sheer monotony, which is Tuesday, but the next 3 days are grueling. And it's just it's a process you have to see to believe and realize the amount of effort and participation people put into being there and being heard.
As somebody said in the chat also, if you disagree, make sure you take the time to go talk to that individual and listen to understand them. Don't listen to respond, listen to understand them, because they just may not be putting it to words in a way some people can understand. I am guilty of that myself. I say things that some people take in the wrong ways, or I may say something but have meant a little bit more detail onto it than I actually added. So sometimes stopping and saying, hey, when you were talking about that resolution, what exactly did you mean by that? What exactly were you thinking? What was your mindset when you were talking about that? Because maybe you could actually get a deeper understanding of it by having that side conversation with them. And maybe you could say, hey, did you think about wording it this way? Or, oh, I never thought of it that way. And another thing that was said in the chat, even if you're not a delegate, if you're an alternate delegate especially, you still come to national convention, participate. You may not be able to speak at the mic, you may not be able to vote on anything, but you can help your fellow delegates make a decision from your state. You may have the ability to actually influence the vote in your area if you take the time to actually sit down and discuss it with your fellow brothers and sisters on the floor or at dinner. I know some of these states get together and are in their little groups together and go off and do things together. I know Michigan went out and did a boat ride out in Reno before the event started. I unfortunately arrived too late to go to that, but that is something that you could do is help your fellow brothers and sisters discuss this thing. Resolutions too. Even though you're not a delegate, you can provide insight to them when you're discussing the resolutions after hours, and you can learn something. You can learn how the process works. You can learn when to and when not to participate. And I guarantee you, a lot of these state presidents and vice presidents and so on would be more than happy to help educate a new carrier at national convention on how things work. I've met many state presidents who are just itching for more participation from their states. So get involved. Come on down. And hell, you can meet Bill, me, everybody that's been on this podcast. We'll be there.
Oh, I don't have a name.
Delegate.
Yes, Josh, you're invited too. Okay.
Yes, Josh, you can come too, but you're going to have to sit in the booster seat.
Ooh.
If you could see my face right now, I
I know
have
the
the
face you're
biggest
making.
shit grin on my face you've ever seen.
Uh,
But no, you can come meet everybody that's been on this podcast. They're all of them should be there. We're going to be around. I do have my own table there, and there will be other famous people there. We've alluded to that in previous episodes. So come on down. If please try and get time off from work to do it. As many carriers as we can get down there. I want to overload this arena. I want a bunch of first timers there. I want it to be an amazing experience for everybody.
I want. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Josh.
Here's what I don't want. Notice everybody got real quiet. I don't want any more one-timers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want
first timers and
one-person-
last timers.
Yeah. I want first timers. I don't want one-timers or last timers.
Yep. And I do know a couple of them that last year, because of specific comments specific individuals made next to them, will not be at this national convention. They chose not to be involved because of the specific racist and sexist comments that came from the gallery on the floor.
Oh Lord.
And I'm calling that out specifically because those specific people know exactly who they are and should not be making those comments. We are all one craft.
And the chair should have shut them down also.
Well,
immediately.
Myself, another delegate, and the chair all made comments to stop that kind of nonsense on the floor last year. The fact is, those states should have shut that down by using the chair.
Well, the chair has the authority to shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
Does the chair have the authority to revoke their status as a delegate?
By vote of the body.
Yes.
Ah.
And it has to be really egregious.
Yes, and if I'm not, somebody can correct me with this, but I believe it's only a majority vote for that. I don't believe it requires the 2/3 like a constitution change. I believe it is only a majority vote. But if you are such a person who can't help themselves to make comments like that, shame on you. You're not helping this craft by making those comments. You're dividing it. Now, I understand that comments I make about Don Maston and other individuals I have over the years may be seen as division. No, that is typical candidacy running for office. At the end of the day,
most likely it's the truth. James,
at
it's
the
most
end
likely
of the
the truth.
It is. It is. And at the end of the day, when this is over, Don Maston is still going to be a rural carrier. Whether you like it or not, he is still a rural carrier. He is still listed in the United States Postal Service as a rural carrier since 1990 on. And I call a spade a spade. That's what I do. And at the end of the day, when this is over, I get elected, I'm still going to respect him as a rural carrier. And I hope he goes back to run his route. Because I would like him to see what choices he's made has done to this craft. He and his buddy DeJoy.
Thank you, Asparagus. Yeah.
Because it's too far away from his home. But I'd like him to just go rent a hotel room nearby where that office is and run his route for even just a week. Just a week for it. Prove me wrong, Don. You said you could run the route 17 years off a route and you could still fling mail. I'd like to see you do it. You made that comment. I'd like to see you do it on your own route that is super overburdened, and I expect you to be back in less than 12 hours.
You know, you're killing me here, James, because I have to bite my tongue from saying something.
Oh, don't bite your tongue. We're amongst friends here. Don't bite your tongue.
How are you going to run your route when you can't see? Because your hair dye is running down in your face from the heat in Sonora, California. I'm just saying.
Okay, I take
Worst
that back. I shouldn't have let you.
Mark that for editing, huh? You said it was okay, you know?
Yeah, his route is in Sonora, California. It currently takes 2 to 3 RCAs to run it daily, at least from reports of carriers in his office that I've talked to.
I heard it got cut.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
I believe it's a government vehicle route. But, no, I'd love to actually see him go out and deliver a route for a week or a month. I mean, we do know that Miss Boziak is running her route after leaving the national board. I still have reports from people that I know close to the situation that she is still running her route. So I give her props on that.
And again, I'm going to bite my tongue, and you're not going to talk me into saying it either.
I will not this time. I made the mistake once. But the thing about it is, whatever happens, just know we are doing what we can to make this craft better, and every single listener to this needs to do the same. Every single carrier listening to this, every single national board member listening to this, or their appointed employee that's listening to this, needs to focus on doing what is important to this craft. Rural carriers first, last, and everything in between. Because that is all that matters in the long run. If we don't start turning this ship around and taking care of the rural carriers, there won't be anybody left working as rural carriers. Look at how many routes are having carriers having to work their relief days because we can't hire in RCAs because we don't pay them enough. We require them to have a vehicle before they have any money to afford a vehicle. And we're turning around and just devastating this craft with things like the MOU telling them that they can volunteer to help on other routes, and management has turned it around to a voluntold situation. What do we have to do to return to where people were lining up out the door for this job? What do we have to do to where people take pride in this job and the job that they do and what they do for their customers? How do we fix what is going on with this union? That's what I'm here to do. We need higher wages. There is no way we are going to get people in these doors without higher wages. We need to get rid of the hostile and toxic work environment. We need to get the public involved to speed up the mail delivery process. FedEx and UPS are beating us in transit times now for packages and express and things like that. We are losing out on that market. We need to have a responsive and proactive NSS and national board. We need to stop being behind the eight ball on this. And we need a union that focuses on carrier participation in union things over just getting union dues into the coffers. We are people. We are not numbers on a spreadsheet. And we need somebody who doesn't look at us like a spreadsheet, doesn't get statistics on accidents from management and blames the carriers for the accident.
Or a vehicle for dues generation.
Yes. Just a number on a spreadsheet for how much dues have they paid in, how much money do they donate to PAC, what have they done for the union lately. I understand the question is not what has the union done for you, but what have you done for the union? And most people say, I pay my dues. Well, I need you to step up and participate. Because just paying dues doesn't help the situation. It benefits us in the long run with things that we're fighting for and fighting grievances and things like that. But we need the active participation of our craft to be involved. Look at the city carriers. Look at the participation that they have. The concerned letter carriers running against the regime of Brian Renfro and others. Fighting to change their craft. It's just like the Great Postal Strike in the 70s. It wasn't the rural carriers that started it. It was the city carriers. It's time for our craft to step up. It's time for us to get involved. It's time for us to say enough is enough. And yes, I'm using a line from Maston and the privatization of the Postal Service stuff. But it's true. We've had enough of being treated like second-class citizens, especially table twoers feeling like second-class citizens to table oneers. And I'm not saying table oneers don't deserve more. Table oneers deserve a lot more too. Gone are the days of this job being the only job that a person has to have in a family to support a 4-family member household. Gone are the days where one person could afford a home, a car, and a vacation off of a single salary.
Let alone get that vacation.
And I'm not calling for a strike because that is illegal. Title 39 refers back to Title 5 with the anti-strike clause. Plus, we have the anti-strike clause in our contract. But we can protest. We can stand out and get the public involved, especially with the mail delivery and things like that. There are a lot of things we can do legally to make a change. But in order to do that, we have to stand up and step up.
I need everybody who is on the fence about being a delegate to just do it. If you're even thinking 1% about running as a delegate to the national convention next year, just freaking do it.
And we're talking about next year because this year's already been set in stone. And we've been pushing it since the end of National Convention last year for this very reason, because it comes up quickly.
Well, what I did, I will say this. The very first issue of the year of the Rural Letter Carrier magazine, they have the sign up. I don't let it sit in my house more than a day. I make a photocopy of that page, I fill it out, I self-nominate. Shameless plug. Vote Josh Stowe, delegate North Carolina. But I fill it out and I send it in. And when I get the confirmation back from my secretary treasurer, I don't let it sit in my house more than a day. When y'all get your ballots, vote them. Don't sit on them, because life has that funny thing of, Bill, what's that little phrase that life blank?
Out of sight, out of mind.
Life happens out of sight, out of mind. Stuff happens. If y'all are serious about this, step up. If you have people in your office that aren't members, talk to them. Get them involved. Invite them to a union meeting.
Well, we have been harping about the delegates since last year. After the convention, we started talking about it. And we have talked incessantly in regards to selecting the right delegates. And James is right in regards to, changing, the mindset, and changing management, changing the way they treat us. But it starts with strong leadership. And we don't have that. Yeah. Now, let me run a scenario. Let me run a scenario by you, okay? And James, don't take offense to this, okay?
I'm going to.
We got all right. Well, you probably will.
You primed him. He's going to.
You sensitive piece of shit. You. Let's say we go to the convention. James runs for president against Don Madsen and loses. Okay. Now, in my mind, this is how this is going to go. Don Madsen is going to have a lame duck year. At the convention for 2026, John Adams will resign his position as the Director of Labor Relations and run for president, which he would probably win handily. This is my scenario, okay? If James loses to Madsen, then he ought to run for either Vice President or Director of Steward Operations. That's my opinion. This is a scenario I've laid out. Anybody who votes for Don Madsen this year saying that he's a lame duck, he's going to retire at the end of next year and all that, and doesn't think that Don Madsen can influence and harm this craft any more than he already has, is full of shit. Because he will continue to sign MOUs in regards to assisting on other routes. He will continue to sign MOUs extending people to be responsible for their pay cuts and paying money back, because the post office and our doctors of engineering that screwed up the system are holding us accountable for monies, even though we've worked over 48-hour K rates for years and never got paid for a penny of it. The money they got back from these carriers this past year is pennies, and compared to the dollars, hundreds and thousands, millions of dollars that they have gotten off us for free on overburdened routes. And on top of that, Don Madsen will probably sign another MOU in regards to freezing routes for even a longer period of time than 2 mini-mail surveys, which, as we pointed out several episodes ago, that could be up to 17 months of frozen pay. And if you're in an area like myself where there isn't a lot of room for growth or anything, you're pretty much screwed for a year and a half. So before you think that your vote for a delegate next year, that your vote for a delegate this year doesn't matter. If these people vote along the lines that they have for the past 5 years, vote for Don Madsen again, it'll be just as bad as they did last year. Because look at the contract we got. I'm going for substantial wage increases. I want to eliminate the Table 2 tier system. We got neither.
And the reason he only called it a positive because they didn't do any concessions. Well, if you don't take any concessions, you don't get any major wins. Unfortunately, that is the fact. If you're not willing
no.
things, you're not going to win
James, he did get 2 weeks taken off of every step on Table 2.
Okay, so I get to the top step 6 months earlier.
Oh, that's right. The city carriers had steps removed from theirs, didn't they?
The whole steps removed. Yeah.
Not weeks, steps.
And the clerks continue to have full colas for all their tables. Why didn't we get the full colas like the APWU did on both tables
Because you'd
instead
have
of
to
Diet
have
Cola?
because you need somebody in leadership role with a backbone. That's why. You need somebody with a better strategy in regards to negotiating instead of going in there and saying, "Well, I'll take whatever you gave the city carriers."
Here's my prediction of a Don Maston presidency. It's going to start out okay. We're going to get a couple months in, and the MOU has to be renewed for regular carriers to volunteer on other routes. Management's going to come back with the volunteer, and as Maston, or as was alluded to me from a national board member that I will not name, Maston had presented to the national board a contract where that MOU was actually in the contract. And management was fighting to get rid of Christmas overtime to put that MOU in there. What I see happening is Maston renewing that MOU, removing the volunteer wording from it, and making it a voluntold situation where management can force carriers to do that, or they could sign up for an OT list like city carriers do, and they'll be told, here's the part that you're going to take today because we're short so many carriers on routes. The next thing I will see is he's not going to sign another MOU making it longer for carriers to get their route adjusted. The 52 weeks was the bare minimum to make sure that 52 weeks worth of data was available for the route. But I do see that MOU continuing in perpetuity to protect carriers, as he says, but it's just hurting carriers because we are paid on the past 52 weeks now. See, our mail count system was designed to take the volume of the mail in that 2-week count and pay us an approximation of what that volume would be for the next year or 6 months or however long till the next count happened. Now, everything is based on the past 52 weeks. So work we've done is what we're getting paid for now. This MOU hurts those carriers that have been doing that work, but it does hurt the carriers that are picking up the slack on those routes. So I don't see him getting rid of that MOU because it benefits the 33% of carriers that get route increases from the stuff that's cut off other routes. I do see more things coming down the pipeline. I know the red line policy is coming back again. I just saw it in the management chat that I'm part of, that they're reinstituting red line policies in quite a few offices again. So I maybe see Maston agreeing to allowing that on our end of shift duties because we get paid straight time to stand there and wait for management to verify our mail. And I see a complete disheartening of this craft because situations still are not getting resolved in these offices. The hostile work environment's not getting resolved because they believe MOU is basically a lame duck because management argues that it's only there that they can force retraining on these managers, not actually terminate them, even though that's in the language of the MOU. So I see more managers getting away with hostile and toxic work environments with carriers, and I see carriers deciding to pull all their dues after Maston's reelected. And I've spoken with quite a few carriers who've already said that if Maston is reelected, they will be pulling their dues from this craft, and that is not a threat, but that is just how disheartened they are with how this union has been operating. Josh, what do you think it would be like under a Maston administration for the next year?
I'm pretty much going to echo what you say. I'm just waiting for that MOU to be forced on us And at that point, we might as well just become city carriers. I mean, the hallmark of being a rural carrier is when I'm done as a regular carrier, I go home. I'm not here for 8, 10, or 12 hours like a city carrier. I like that part of my job. I don't like working 12 hours a day every day. So I'm sorry. Do I help out on other routes? Yes. But that's at my discretion. I don't want my discretion to be removed from my decision-making process. Okay, if I want to help somebody, sure, I'll help them. But if I have something to do after work, I'm going to go do it. That's part of being a rural carrier.
Nice. Now, Bill, let's go the opposite end. Let's go the opposite end. What do you think it would be like under a James Brennan presidency?
Oh, happy days. oh, happy days. Well, let's see. First of all, I'd have to come down there and live with you since I'm going to be your special counsel in regards to line by line contract writing, because of the fact that we have a lot of problems in that contract where management may, management can, management will. That has to be corrected. There's at least, what was it, 52 I was up to, 52 lines that has to be corrected. The stop giving management the authority that they may or they can or they will. I think under your administration, depending on who your vice president is, okay, and I think I know where you would go with that, but I'll keep that to myself. And I think that there would be almost like a shock reorganization of the headquarters down there. I think that you would start with the two specifics, which would be the Department of Labor Relations and the Department of Steward Operations, in regards to how we address the toxic work environment in recruiting new stewards, local stewards, area stewards, in getting rid of some of these career NSS employees who aren't fulfilling their duties as they should be. I think there would also be an opportunity for you to turn around and examine the roles of the executive committee board, the executive committee people, in regards to how the DRs and ADRs are handled, how they perform, and how they are overseen in the performance of their duties. As we've seen in the past, we've had DRs removed after somebody discovered they haven't processed step 2 grievances for 2.5 years. We've seen ADRs removed. In my area, we've had 3 ADRs removed in a year. So there's something wrong there. I would see you enforcing a new training module in regards to stewards training, and in regards to the recertification, as well as the DRs and the ADRs. DR should be versed in the contract. It should be versed in all the manuals and booklets related to the Postal Service, to the point where they know it like the Bible. That's just, the footprint of what I would see you do. I would also expect, and I don't know if that would be attainable under your reign, but I would also like to see the financials on the National Steward System, because you know how adamant I am about the expenditures that are reported on the LM2s. One of the things that really pisses me off is that every year, these people get a $500 advance for expenses and they don't pay it back at the end of the year. You're making $100,000 plus and don't repay a $500 advance. And this has been going on for 10 years, folks. I mean, come on. You've earned over $1 million. You can't pay back $500 a year. Ugh. And one of the things I'd really like to see is getting rid of the houses and buying a condo building. I mean, something that's centrally located, easier to maintain and everything. But we don't need to be housing our people in $800,000 and $900,000 houses just because that's the market down there. There's better ways to spend their money. I would like to see the vice president turn around and negotiate better deals with these hotels when we do our conventions. After that, I mean, that would be up to your discretion. But I know your positivity, your knowledge, and your chutzpah, for a lack of a better word, because I don't want to mention your big swinging brass balls that you have. But I just did. Sorry. Fact of the matter is that I would like to see you go in there and introduce yourself to your counterpart in the Postal Service and say, okay, that there's a new captain at the helm of this ship, and we're coming right at you. We deserve better. We're entitled better. We carry this service. We carry the United States Postal Service. Us, the city craft, the clerks, we are the ones that make this work. And we're entitled to the respect, we're entitled to the integrity, and we're entitled to the pay that carries this company. That's what I see you doing in the first 30 days.
Josh?
No pressure then.
Wow.
No pressure.
What do you see?
I see the abolition of this MOU where you can volunteer to work other routes. Or if it's kept, it will be enforced as a strictly volunteer basis. I also see a national board that is given a directive to go out there and recruit members to go to offices and talk to carriers. Talk to people, not just in the big post offices. Go out to the boondock post offices and talk to people, especially if you're aware of an office that's 100% anti-union. Shoot, I would want you to have someone in there talking to those carriers, trying to figure it out. Why aren't they members? What can we do to get them on board? Other than that, folks, it's all about getting people involved, and it's about loving the craft. And I think James Brennan's the best because he loves this craft, and it shows. He's putting himself out there to go against someone who's been up there for a very long time. And win or lose, James, you've got all the respect in the world from me.
I appreciate that, guys. Now,
And let me go on, James. As Josh said about going out to podunks and all that, and I had mentioned that before in the speech, that you go to a state convention, as a president, or you go to a national convention, you go to a booster, you go to whatever type meetings. Take a day before or a day after, to go visit the local offices with the postmaster's permission, of course, and talk to these carriers. Go to a couple offices in a day and address these situations so that they see they put a face to their union. And realize, okay, here's a guy coming out to us asking what we need, what has to be done. Make that connection with the people, because there's such a disconnect that they don't care. They don't. Half of them don't know who Don Matson is. But if you put your face out there, guess what? Then we might swell the ranks. Then we might get people to join the union again, or for the first time.
And but if you get our voting numbers up.
Yeah, and show them that not only can they participate, but you're participating in their lives, and that means a lot. I mean, I just saw where the Mercy doctors or something, they're still in North Carolina from last year, serving 8,000 meals a week in North Carolina. But the thing of it is that when that first all happened, everybody in the area with the helicopter was out there rescuing people, reporting, people being stranded and all that, where they didn't have access to them. And yet they were shut down by FEMA, by the federal government, because of air safety. You know what? Until you get your asses up in the air, don't tell me what the hell to do. Somebody's life is more important than anything else. And the same thing for you. I mean, when you get elected, you go out there and you see the people, you hear their complaints, they feel that connection. It's like being on a campaign trail and pressing the flesh. If it's not tangible to them, then it doesn't affect them. It's just, oh, I heard somebody say, oh, but yeah, I saw it on Facebook. Oh, yeah. No, real live contact solidifies your position and your concern in real time to individuals who felt like they've been abandoned.
I agree with everything you guys said, and one of the things I'm definitely going to be doing is spending a hell of a lot of time in meetings with the Postmaster General, because we know what's going on the ground out here. He doesn't. He knows what FedEx done. He knows what FedEx is doing. I know he's an anti-union person and so on and so forth, but I'm going to go in there and I'm going to show him the benefits of our union in this craft. I'm going to show him the benefits of paying workers a living wage, not just what they think is a living wage, but a wage that people can actually live on. I'm going to discuss how the post office can save money in many ways. Number one, getting rid of a lot of management, especially the toxic and hostile ones. I'm going to go in and take the time to educate management, because it's obvious that our current national board isn't taking the time to educate the issues that are going on. For instance, another national board member told me, we can file grievances all day long. Labor agrees with us on it, but operations won't fix it. Operations doesn't care that labor is paying out all this money and grievances, because they have their own mindset of what needs to be done. But this Postmaster General is the one that can put their foot down and say, operations, you're costing me money. If you don't stop doing this and these grievances keep getting filed, I'm going to have to fire you. Taking care of these carriers is number one importance to me. Taking care of every single carrier, whether they're in a 200 route office or a 1 route office. Getting boots on the ground is ultimate in this, because I know there are carriers out there that can't make these meetings. There are carriers out there that can't get involved like most should get involved. But I'm going to find a way to get communication to and from them, because they are the reason we are here. They are the reason this union started. They are the reason this union fights for carriers. But we have forgotten that. We have been so focused on the bigger offices, on the bigger amount of carriers, the bigger problems because of the number of grievances filed. Like my office, there aren't a lot of grievances filed. Why? Because it's solved usually by having a discussion with management. My office would be ignored because there's no grievances. That shouldn't be the way. They should know who their designated union rep is at any time to be able to contact them if they have questions or concerns. Yes, you have access to the NRLCA app and the website. But like Josh said, putting a face to your union representation is paramount to having a positive dialogue with carriers. In my first 30 days, it's going to be a whirlwind. And not in a bad sense. because I'm first going to figure out what is working and what isn't working first. Because if it is working, maybe we shore it up. But if it isn't working, it needs to go. And we need to figure out everything these carriers need on the ground. Because this isn't the post office from the 90s. Even Maston agrees with that this isn't the post office of the 90s. Post office of the 90s, you didn't have DPS. You didn't have FSS. You didn't have Amazon and DHL and UPS and FedEx dropping off a crap ton of parcels at Christmas time because they don't even have enough manpower to cover their routes. So they drop it on us thinking we have enough manpower to do it. We don't even have enough manpower to do our routes in the summertime, let alone at Christmas time. We need to find a way to get butts into these routes and care about those butts. Because otherwise, we're going to be dying as a union. And I hate to be so negative about it, but we have so many open spots in this craft already. We're only going to make more if we keep going down this path. All right, guys, we're going on almost 2 hours now. Josh, your final thoughts?
Weather is still wild. It's summer. Beat the heat. Don't keep it moving. If you need to stop and take a break, take a break. Make sure you're hydrating. Click the damn seatbelt in. And before you know it, we'll be in National Convention. We're just over a month away, or a little over a month away, from the start of the National Convention. If you have a delegate in your office that's going there, if you haven't run or if you didn't make delegate, be sure to talk to that delegate and let them know that their hopes are resting on that your hopes rather are resting on them to represent properly at the National Convention. But like I say, good night and good luck. We've got to change something, y'all. We have to stand for something, or we'll fall for anything. That's all I got for tonight. Bill?
Well, I know where you're at there, Josh, and you're going to be wet all week like me here. We got a tropical storm coming ashore. So, again, if you see water on the road, don't get drowned, turn around, be safe. Better to err on the safe side than, to be struggling to get out of a vehicle floating down the Susquehanna. This topic of how you get people to come back to the union, to join the union, and all, it's like I said, you have to put a face out there. You have to press the flesh, just like a politician. You have to show sincere, care about these individuals. But most importantly, after you do that, you have to follow through. You just can't glad hand your ass up to a position. You have to be able to take those suggestions, those criticisms, and you will get criticisms if you're in a position of authority, and you have to act on them. And whether or not you can satisfy everybody, which will never happen, the fact that you actually attempted to do something to correct the situation just enforces the integrity in that individual's eye. Yes, I didn't get exactly what you wanted, but this is what we did accomplish. That's a step. That's a positive step. I'm just, overwhelmed. Like James said, the lack of traffic on the different platforms since this tentative agreement became our contract. Because of the fact that it seems like everybody's just settled back into the seat of apathy and said, oh, well, there's nothing we could do. Well, you could have, but you didn't return your ballots, did you? Or some of you didn't get your ballots. I thought it was funny that I didn't get my May magazine with the information for the convention. It's an oversight on their part. I've gotten every other one, but that's kind of strange that I didn't get that one. But I'm informed, so I got a hotel. I got a room at the hotel, and didn't have to go to the overflow or anything. I've got my plane booked, and I'm all set to go. But you have to be involved to be aware of these situations. You have to be involved to have the knowledge to stand up to management or to stand up for somebody. This is the type of situation where this election here that is coming up is going to say a lot about the delegates that you voted to send there. And if the same thing repeats itself, if history repeats itself, then you need to step back and take a look at who the hell is voting for these people. Because there's something rotten in Denmark, folks. You can't tell me there's not a qualified person in the 50 states that wouldn't be able to stand up to this current board. And actually, and when I say current board, there's only 2 positions in there I consider that need to be taken down. And I'm not going to mention president, vice president. I wouldn't do that. But the fact of the matter is that, these delegates, as Josh said, speak for 100 of us. That's an awesome responsibility. It's not one to be taken lightly. And you shouldn't vote along party lines. It's like Democrats and Republicans. You can't vote for party lines. You have to vote for the direction you want this craft to go in. And status quo is not the direction we need right now. We need strong, supportive leadership that James would offer. We need strong, supportive vice president, director of steward operations, director of labor relations. And quite frankly, folks, that there's a couple of executive committee people that I highly question whether they should be in those positions. That's my opinion. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't stand up, if you don't make a noise, if you don't belong to the union, you don't have a voice, and we can't make the changes necessary. This is, a critical point for us. Cass, not as individuals, James, myself, or Josh, but for our craft. Because otherwise, we're going to be stuck in another year of selling the craft down the river. We're going to be stuck with a leader who thinks that if you're on table 2, the MOU is a good way to make up extra money. Yes, it is. But if you didn't have table 2, you wouldn't need the extra money to pay your bills, to buy groceries, to fix your POV. Would we? No. And if you didn't have the table 2, then the MOU wouldn't be so bad because of the fact that you wouldn't need that as a way to supplement your income unless you wanted to. Instead of being voluntold by management, you could volunteer at your discretion. And that's what it should be, at your discretion. I'm deeply concerned in regards to the delegates that are selected. I hope, I pray, I honestly pray, and I pray every day. I pray for people on my route that I still, have contact with. But I pray for some sense of, I don't know what you call it, common sense or integrity, to vote for change, to vote the craft first instead of your personal wants, to vote for your conscience and not your paycheck. I mean, I think I'm probably one of the few people in this craft that ever had a route correction done, adjustment, and then turned around and corrected it again, costing myself 5 miles every day, which cost me money. But not only was it the right thing to do, it was the efficient thing to do. But if they ever caught me running the route different from what that mileage was, you know they would go home and put a gold star in the refrigerator because they got Bill May's ass. And I'm not a target for anybody. You got heat, you've got rain, you've got toxic work environment, you got asshole management, but yet you go out there and you do the job every day. You provide for your family, for yourselves. You provide for the community. You're part of the community you deliver to. You know, you're your eyes and ears during the day. You know, you're the emergency services for that lonely widow or widower who live alone and you don't see for a couple days. You are the heartbeat of this damn country. And then you go out there and prove it. And God bless you all, because it's not an easy thing to do. As I always say, be professional, be efficient, be careful. Make sure that you are the last delivery of the day, because you are the most important delivery of the day, and get back to your loved ones. God bless you all. James?
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. You know, there's a lot of talk about what can happen, what could happen, what's involved. But to actually see it in action, you need to come to National Convention. Sure, a lot of it is boring as hell, especially if you're not participating. But being involved in this union in any way you possibly can is the only way we can make change here. Now, I talk about this craft every week with these guys and former girls and so on this, and former guys on this podcast, because we're passionate about this craft and we're trying to instill that passion into each and every one of you. Whether you are an alternate or a non-delegate, be involved. Help this craft and help yourself too. Everything that happens at National Convention affects every single carrier out there on the street. You are one of those carriers if you're in the rural craft. If you're not in the rural craft listening to this, then it probably doesn't affect you. But it does affect your delivery of your mail, and we are required to deliver to every household 6 days a week. Amazon Sunday is its own beast, but 6 day a week mail delivery. Everybody in this nation is affected by this. And you're one of those people that's affected, whether you're a carrier or not. I'm fighting for change because I see what this craft is going through, and I see where it is headed with the current leadership. Even though our current national board members gave a blessing to this tentative agreement, I don't believe all of them fully supported it. I believe that it is time for us to step up and make the change. It's time for us to help our brothers and sisters. Help them learn to be safe out there on the route as new RCAs or new regular carriers. Help them learn their edit books. Help them learn what it means to be a brother or sister in a union. Because at the end of the day, it's not the national board that's there for you. It's not your state board that's there for you. It's not your district rep, your assistant district rep, or your area steward. They're only there when you call them right now. It's up to each and every one of us to show our brothers and sisters of this craft that we're all in this together. we'll see you guys next week unless we have something special come up, as always. And I hope you guys have a safe and enjoyable week. See you next time.
Good night and good luck.
Hey guys, I apologize for the delay in getting last week's episode up. I had several people reach out to me due to the content of this. I personally have not listened to last week's episode, but I will say that people were warned in the past in person about the political soapbox and whatnot on the air. And that was one of the reasonings why it was delayed, and my life has just been busy lately. So, it is out now, and this week's episode will be uploaded immediately following. Thanks.